If you are a Notability user and you want to move some files from maybe one Apple ID to another, or even if you had some old Notability files that are for some reason not syncing, that happens to be the case in my instance. I'm moving from a personal Apple ID over to my school or federated Apple ID, and so not all of my files were syncing properly. And so what I am doing is I'm bringing in some of my files from Google Drive, because I did do a backup in Google Drive. My iCloud sync isn't going to work in this case because I have changed my Apple ID over. I'm signed into a different Apple ID. And so Notability is looking at my Apple ID and saying you don't have these files there. But I did back them up with Google Drive. If that's you, then I want you to see how you can bring in files that have been backed up in Google Drive into Notability. So we're going to see here that I've got my file structure in place, so the way that I like my files organized. And then you can see here, for instance, in my thinking sheets area, I have nothing there, but I know that I've got some thinking sheets. So I'm going to click on this Share button in the upper right, the box with the inward pointing arrow. I'm going to go to Google Drive where I'm signed in. Take just a moment for Google Drive to read that. Once it reads my Google Drive folder, I'm going to go to where all of Notability files are stored, which is in the Notability area here. So I've got a Notability folder. Now in the lower right you can see I'm going to load these into my thinking sheets. And so I go and find my matching thinking sheets, and you wouldn't have to do it this way, but I know that mine backed up this way in Drive. So I'm going to click on thinking sheets. Great. All of these are ones that I'd like to bring in, so I'm going to click on Import All in the lower left-hand corner. Import. You can see it takes a moment for it to load, but it's going to bring them in and populate them into my Notability. Now I can do that same thing, so we'll back out. I also want to bring in my Qualtrics X4. I just have to change which folder it's going to look at. And then I can import all here. So it's one way for you to move files between accounts, especially if they were backed up in Google Drive but aren't showing up in your iCloud backup for you. And that is how you can import files into Notability. Now note, once they back up in iCloud, on, in my case, my federated ID, because I also use backup there, so you can see in my auto backups, I've got my Google Drive turned on. I also have my iCloud backup. So now once I bring them in, it'll also be in my iCloud backup as well. So that's how we bring them in.